to avert a potential strike of roughly 150,000 auto workers at factories run by GM, Ford, and Stellantis. General Motors.
Elon Musk on the UAW strikes. UAW demands would bankrupt Ford, GM, and Stellantis. The once booming car manufacturing industry, with Ford and GM at the forefront, has seen better days. Many experts believe that the industry's downfall can be attributed to unresolved issues with labor unions, which ultimately made these companies unprofitable. This problem isn't unique to Ford. They're facing similar challenges in other countries too. Elon Musk, the Tesla CEO, thinks that the demands from the United Auto Workers, or UAW, could push Ford and General Motors to bankruptcy, and many experts share the same view. But is Musk's fear true? What is his stance in this case? Is his EV company also taking the heat? Let's find out in today's video. Elon Musk isn't the only one sounding the alarm. Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, is singing a similar tune. He's pretty frustrated and worried about the ongoing labor disputes and strikes. It's a horrific moment because it's the first time all three big automakers, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, are dealing with the strike all at the same time. Jim Farley has made an offer during negotiations, but he's not hearing anything back from Shawn Fain, the president of the UAW. This lack of communication and progress is raising some eyebrows, especially with the strike hitting hard on the whole industry. Farley wants to make it clear that Ford has always been supportive of labor and has a long history of working with the UAW. But he's frustrated because while they've made some headway on non-money related issues within the union, the financial stuff is stuck in neutral. He's also highlighting the potential consequences of a strike: manufacturing disruptions, negative impacts on worker benefits, and potential layoffs if production grinds to a halt. Farley isn't thrilled with the UAW's demands, and is even questioning whether they'd prefer bankruptcy over supporting their own workers. On the flip side, Elon Musk knows a thing or two about financial stress and bankruptcy. You can read about it in his recent biography or hear about it from some former employees who didn't have the best experiences. Musk faced some tough times with SpaceX and Tesla, even having to borrow money from Google's founder and his brother to make payroll. So when he says bankruptcy could be on the horizon for these car giants, he's not just blowing smoke. Now, if we talk about executive pay, Jim Farley pulls in around 16 to 17 million bucks annually. That might seem like a hefty sum, but when you compare it to some other CEOs like Lucid's top dog, who's ranking in nearly 400 million, or Mary Barra, who's making more than double what Farley does, it doesn't look all that excessive. What's Elon Musk's point here? Well, Elon Musk said they want a 40% pay raise and a 32-hour work week. Sure way to drive General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler bankrupt in the fast lane. Elon Musk's recent move suggests he's got more on his plate than just focusing on Tesla's well-being. Instead of quietly backing unions solely for Tesla's benefit, he's all about pushing for some healthy competition among automakers, which honestly makes a lot of sense. Remember when Mark Roos, the bigwig over at General Motors, threw in his fourth offer to the UAW before the strike? It included a juicy 20% raise spread out over 4.5 years, a clear attempt to address the raising inflation that's got everyone's wallets sweating. On top of that, GM swore off of any plant closures during that contract period, a crucial promise for job security in those towns that rely on those factories. Now, the UAW wasn't exactly throwing confetti in response. Shawn Fain deemed GM's offer not quite up to snuff. According to Automotive News, even after all that back and forth, the union only budged a little, going from a 40% pay raise demand to a 36% one. Starting at 40% might have seemed like a joke when they first tossed it on the table, and it's a classic example of what they call anchoring bias. Instead of shooting high and then dialing it down to say 15%, they settled at 36%. Economically speaking, that's got some folks scratching their heads. It's unclear why the union thinks that companies they work for could stomach such demands, and it's not just about the paychecks. The union's got a laundry list of other demands on the table, like nixing different worker tiers, slashing the number of temporary workers, usually the lower paid folks, bringing back those old-school defined benefit pensions, and asking for more time off, including a cheeky proposal for a 32-hour work week. So essentially, they're aiming for one less workday per week while cashing in significantly more, even at that 36% pay rate. When you crunch the numbers, it's almost a 50% pay raise when you account for the reduced hours. These demands could lead to an average annual salary of around $300,000 per worker, which is way higher than the typical American wage of $60,000 to $70,000. Now that might sound pretty hefty to some, but there's more to this story. Elon Musk's take on this whole mess doesn't come off as sensational. He's just pointing out the obvious concerns about whether these demands can be sustained in the long run. Now let's talk about the UAW strike. It kicked off on September 15th, and it's targeting all three major automakers at once. It's starting to gain some serious steam and affecting more workers, which is putting a wrench in the production gears. Just last month, Ford slipped from being the fourth largest automaker globally to the sixth, and this month their sales are expected to take another hit thanks to the strike. President Joe Biden made some history by showing up on a picket line. He's the first sitting US president to do that, and it's probably got some political reasoning behind it since the UAW is a big part of his support base. Speaking to UAW members at GM's Willow Run Redistribution Center near Detroit, Biden gave props to the union for saving the auto industry back in 2008 and before. Quote, "You made a lot of sacrifices and gave up a lot when the companies were in trouble, but now they're doing incredibly well. And guess what? You should be doing incredibly well too," the US president added. You know, it's interesting to point out that General Motors actually went bankrupt and got a huge government loan during that period. Now, when it comes to Tesla, Rivian, and Lucid, they're not unionized, although there have been efforts in the past to organize. Back in 2017, the UAW tried to unionize Tesla's workers at their Fremont plant in California, but it didn't gain enough support to reach a vote. Elon Musk is actually predicting that something similar might happen again. In February, there was a union campaign at Tesla's Buffalo, New York factory, which ultimately fizzled out. The Workers United Union accused Tesla of firing many campaign supporters. Now, the Buffalo factory might not play a massive role in Tesla's future, and it's likely that Tesla will exit that situation, unionized or not. Unionizing may not have altered the outcome and might have accelerated Tesla's departure. Balancing wage increases and profitability is challenging amid rising wages and electric car tech changes impacting GM, Ford, and the auto industry globally. Musk seeks concessions in this situation. So, how far apart are the two sides in this labor dispute? Well, they're still pretty far apart. In recent weeks, Stellantis upped its raise offer to 21%, and Ford's offer was raised to 23%, while GM were offering around a 20% raise. But here's the kicker. The union is asking for a whopping 36% raise, creating a substantial gap in their negotiations. Now, what are the risks if the strike continues? If the union doesn't succeed, it could make it harder for them to organize non-union auto factories in the US, including those run by foreign manufacturers and, yes, even Tesla. On the other hand, if the union does succeed, these companies might find their labor costs less competitive compared to Tesla and foreign automakers. Michigan, a pivotal swing state that Biden won in 2020, is at the epicenter of this issue, and it's all happening at a time when the auto industry is shifting towards electric vehicles. What comes next hinges on the outcome of these labor negotiations. The big players, GM, Ford, and Stellantis, are pouring substantial resources into electric vehicles, marking a significant shift in the industry. They're arguing that they can't afford to be too generous with contracts given these massive investments. Their next move for the union might be to expand the strike to include large pickup truck plants, which are a significant source of revenue for these automakers. It's definitely a high-stakes showdown. So, do you think that they are justified, or will they indeed lead to bankruptcy of major companies like Ford, GM, and Stellantis? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more industry insights and updates. Thanks for watching.